Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started in just a moment. And as we got a lot of folks still coming into the session, I'm just going to go off and get this started, just casually tee this up a bit as we get a lot of folks still coming in. This is part of an educational workshop series that we've been doing all year long, and we've had some great topics, everything from, hey, what's new in the brand new release of Rome, fill in the blanks, right? We've done stuff on CMDB. We've done a couple on IT business management, and all of them are very different, and they're all really geared towards the same exact thing: how to get more out of ServiceNow, right? So whether it's leveraging technology and licensing you already own, or if you've got a roadmap to add additional pieces of ServiceNow, it's all about how do we drive more outcome and ROI out of that. So the series has been real successful. At the end of today's session, as you close out, you're going to get a survey pop up, and it's going to ask you not only some feedback on today, but we're going to ask what topics are you interested in seeing next year. So we're working on our topics as we head into Q1 of next year. We would love to hear from you on that. So looking forward to feedback there. And again, it looks like we're about a minute past, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody to CDW's ServiceNow series of how to get more out of the platform. And today, in particular, I'm real excited about this topic, IT business management, for a few reasons. CDW, and I think many of you know this, we are a power user of ServiceNow. We're a big customer of ServiceNow, as well as being their #1 global elite partner of the year. We're a huge customer, and we use ITBM extensively. And as a salesperson over here on the senior management staff, I can see our projects and how they're managed and run, and I get to see firsthand how we leverage ServiceNow in this space. But today, the topic is going to be focused on a number of other things, including this idea of maturity. So as a practice here within CDW, our organization does everything related to design, orchestration, and managing of the ServiceNow platform. We'll talk a little bit more at the end about some specific things that might work well with today's topic. But without taking up any more time, I'm looking forward to turning it over to our speakers today. So I'll introduce Josh Sutton, who's going to get us kicked off, and then he'll do the same with Greg Wheeler, who's going to kind of steer a large part of the session today. So thanks for being with us, and we'll do some live Q&A. So either put your questions in the Q&A section on the right side. We might be able to answer some of those right in line as we're kind of doing the session, but we'll also try to save some time at the end and roll up some questions, if we aren't able to get to them during the session. So please put your questions in the Q&A. And on that note, Mr. Sutton, happy to turn it over to you.
Thanks, John. As you see here, I'm the manager for the ServiceNow Solutions R&D group. We represent each one of the 9 BUs that align to the ServiceNow platform, really focusing on the practices, the services, the strategy, and the relationships. Greg is part of my team, and he owns the IT business management portion of the ServiceNow platform. So moving into what we're going to be talking about today, excuse me. We really want to tie in how IT business management communicates and works in conjunction with the rest of ServiceNow, because there's a lot of relationship and data that can be leveraged when you're utilizing the ITBM products within the ServiceNow platform. We're also going to talk about IT business management as a practice and how it helps IT leaders transition from being that cost center and order taker to a service provider and having a seat at the table, right? They're a valued business partner for the entire business and organization. A big portion of this presentation is really around the IT governance and the model for that, how ServiceNow solution addresses that model, and then talking about the journey of implementation, but also not just the product, but the implementation of IT business management practices as well. So what does IT business management mean? If we break it down, we've got kind of 2 layers of ITBM. It's business management and IT management. So business management is actually the coordination and organization of all the activities that are going on in your business. And typically includes what you're doing to make money for your business, right? Materials, machines, the innovation and marketing for your organization, and then partner that with IT management. It's monitoring, administration, and organization of all the IT systems in your org, hardware, software, network, end users, all of those types of things. And IT management focuses on how we actually make information systems efficient and optimized within our processes. So partner that together, we have ServiceNow's definition of IT business management. It aligns the work that the greater business is doing and the goals and strategies that it has for delivering products and services in a way that supports the strategic priorities. So ITBM essentially helps to demonstrate the value of your organization through an IT lens and rationalize that investment to focus on innovation, strategy, and maturity. It also helps transform the delivery of new products and services through lean execution methodologies, meaning cut the waste and focus on the highest value opportunities for delivering and transforming your organization. So with that, I'm going to toss it over to Greg Wheeler, and he's going to get into the bulk of our presentation. Hold on, Greg. I think you're still muted.
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah, so as Josh was mentioning, so IT business management kind of combines the world of business management and IT management. So let's break that down into some other pieces. If we look at this conversation, there's pieces of this value conversation. IT should be having a business conversation with, or a value conversation with the business. So there's some pieces of this. One, from an organizational perspective, we should be positioning ourselves for value. Well, what does that mean? We need to define how IT provides value through its offerings throughout the organization back to the business side of the organization. And we should also be looking at continuously improving our, what we do so that we can provide same or better services at a less expensive level, so we can provide better services to the organization. Then there's some core disciplines that we want to look at. There's this create transparency. By opening up and providing transparency, by showing back into the organization what things cost, how they have, how we're able to address them, we're becoming a better partner to the business, and we're able to have decisions and work on decisions cooperatively with the business on that. And by doing that, what we can also do is start to shape business demand, because by showing transparency with the business, we start to let them understand the true cost and value proposition for each of the things they ask for. I always kind of refer to this as if I went to Amazon.com and started putting things in the cart and the price did not change, the cost did not change, I would put everything in the cart, right? There's nothing there. So if by showing transparency, creating a transparent organization, we can start to shape the business and shape demand from the business. Then we start to have value conversations. So what is the cost for the services that we offer at this point? What are the costs for performance and the cost for providing them? What are the costs for improving them? Or is there an approach that we can reduce the amount that some of these costs and provide more value, right? So we need to right size our services. We also need to align those services to what the business is looking for. So we need to make sure that the services that we're offering actually support what the business is trying to achieve and provide the value back. So that's on the run the business. On the change the business side, we're looking at making the right investments in innovation, making the right investments in projects, you know, looking at what projects and engagements or that initiatives that we're taking on that bring back the most value. And at the same time, we're trying to be agile. We're trying to be able to move quickly as the business needs to move, and we're trying to make sure that we can be a partner to the business in that respect. And across all of those is where the value conversation comes in. Because if we're at a limit where our value conversation is maxed out, where our value, our ability is maxed out, the business may make decisions to reduce some of the run the business costs to enable investment in the change the business model. Or it may try to do some trade-offs between different investment areas. So this is where all of these pieces come together, where we then start to become a value partner to the business instead of just a cost center to the business. This is a slide that we've been doing for a long time here at CDW. And what this is saying is that we have business needs and business drivers that go into what we do from an IT perspective. And those business needs and business drivers come in the form of three different fashions. One, there's service requests, which is a request for something that we have in our service catalog with service levels associated with it and with an understanding of what's in and out of scope of that service. And through that, we operate through operational demand. We do request fulfillment. On the operations side here, we may need change management to implement some of that, but we provide value back to the business, right? So we have an input of a business need or a business driver. We provide value back by working through this. At the same time, we have incidents, things that are broken against those services that we offer. And again, incident management, change problem management, we provide value back. Why are we having this conversation as part of ITBM? Well, Gartner will tell us that this operational investment, this operational resourcing, is between 65 and 70% of our day-to-day IT operations. So we have to understand that so much of our IT operations are being used just to keep the lights on, just to maintain where we are. We need to understand what those resources are and what they're allocated off to do in order to be able to make decisions on that other 30, 35% that we have left, where we're moving the business forward, either optimizational demand, where we're moving it forward in small increments, our continuous improvement, or our strategic demand, where we're doing something more transformational and moving that forward. We also want to then look at some of those trade-offs. Can we do things to improve our operational demand and reduce that 60, 65, 70% figure down to 50% or 40% by coming up with consistent, reliable, repeatable processes that we have the ability to optimize and maybe automate? Or can we reduce the service levels that are being asked for to free up resources to do more things to improve and move the business forward? So this is a conversation that we should be having with our business routinely through the form of business relationship management or some other service like that. So what is this model? We talked about an IT governance model and how does that tie together? And I know IT governance is an old school term that has fallen out of favor at times, but I think these frameworks kind of put things in a perspective that make it easy to understand. So COBIT's governance framework talks about our governance objective. So what's this objective? Well, it's value creation. We want to make sure that what we are doing provides the biggest benefit to the organization, makes the best use of our resources, while at the same time stays within our level of risk, the risk that we feel comfortable with. And by governance establishing those areas, then we take through our enablers and our governance model, we take and we look through these different roles and relationships and how they work together. So our owners and stakeholders delegate to a governing body of some sort, a board or some sort of high-level governing body, responsibility for this organization and for what needs to be done. So in bigger organizations, this may be formal. In smaller organizations, this is a little less formal, but or maybe the same people in the owner stakeholder world as in the governing body. So they delegate that responsibility. That governing body then provides direction to management, IT management in this case, who then make sure that operations are executed in a way that support our benefit realization, that are within our risk model, and uses best use of our resources. And then there's a report back area where operations reports back to management to make sure that we're on track and on goals. Management then governing bodies monitoring against that management to make sure we're there, and then the governing body holds accountability back to the owners and the stakeholders. So if we take and we break this out a little bit further, and how does this work from From an IT perspective, this is similar to that funnel diagram that we showed up above, where we have business needs and business drivers. Governance is evaluating what are these needs. They're playing the value conversation. They're doing the trade-offs. They're making decisions, and then they're providing direction to IT management. IT management is then turning around and planning, working through build, run, and monitoring of services and providing value back. And at the same time, providing reporting back to the governance layer so the governance layer can make sure that what is in place is providing what they're expecting. Another view of this is FSA's governance model. And I know I'm showing a couple different models in a couple different formats, but I think this starts to bring a good visual to what we're trying to do. And each of these has a little bit different view to them. In this model, what we're really looking at is a business strategy. Does our business have a strategy and what they're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve in the future in 1 year, 3 year, 5 year increments? And then does our strategy align, does the IT strategy align to and support the business strategy? So this is really where we're having a seat at the table. We're part of the business strategy conversation because we're saying, hey, we can support this, we can help this, we can maybe move this forward. At the same time, off on the right, you're seeing that there's an IT transformation. So at the same time, we're trying to improve what we're trying to get to. We're trying to move forward. We're trying to make sure that we're on the right footing for what we're trying to achieve. In order to take these strategies and make them real, the link between IT governance and IT management is we have an organization, we have resources, we have an enterprise architecture, we have investment decisions that we're making, and we have a risk posture that we want to make sure that we tie together. Well, ServiceNow has a whole suite of functionality and platform that helps to support all of this. As you can see in the upper left-hand corner, we have strategies, goals, and funding that go into our investment planning aspects of this. We have operational decisions that are either through licensing down on the lower left side or in the pinkish area in the middle, where we're keeping track of what we're doing. We also have build and support operations on different pieces. So there's different pieces of this platform that will go directly towards supporting the governance model that we just talked about. How does that work? Well, if this is the FSA governance model on the top half, I've combined and simplified that busy diagram that we just showed you into these areas. So how would some of this work? Well, within the model, we're trying to address business strategy, IT transformation. Well, that's going to be innovation management, business planning, demand management for making decisions, APM for understanding our architecture and how that supports that, and investment funding. IT organization will be addressed in our business planning, resource management, and in our core data. IT resources we're going to address through demand management by identifying what projects we're doing or what initiatives we're taking on and how that works. PPM for maintaining that as we move forward, but also in ITSM because we've defined our services. So what is our operational piece? How does that operational demand take on and play against the other demand that we have and what resources that we have left? IT investment management. Well, obviously we have the investment funding and innovation management where we're making decisions. We have application portfolio management. Do we have the right mix? If somebody's looking to implement a new service or bring in a new application, do we already have something that has those same capabilities? Do we already have something that addresses that? So APM helps to feed our investment decisioning, as well as IT asset management for understanding what we have. And then lastly, our risk profile. What are we comfortable with from a risk profile? What are we comfortable with the information that we have? So obviously SecOps and GRC help us support our risk and where we're going with risk. At the same time, though, ITSM supports and ties towards that. Demand management, when some innovation in demand management, when a proposal is made, when something new is suggested, Do we feel comfortable? Is that within our risk profile? So we're evaluating at that level. Application portfolio management. Does the applications that we're bringing on board, do they fit within the risk profile that we're looking at? So the different pieces of the ServiceNow platform really do help support this framework and provide back business, help us make sure that we're providing back business value as we move forward. So then what's next? Each of these discipline areas that we just talked about, each of these areas all have different levels of maturity. And what we want to be able to do is understand those levels of maturity and understand where we want, what is mature enough. So ServiceNow has a whole suite of ITBM applications. They run from, what we've talked about, investment and innovation management, through release management, portfolio and SDLC type things, to some financial management aspects. And so what we have done here is we have grouped those applications and those disciplines into 6 major towers, for lack of a better word, 6 disciplines, and we've aligned these products to this. So under project portfolio management, we're really talking about our project management discipline, our portfolio management discipline, our program management discipline, and our ability to do scenario planning. Under resource and time, obviously, is resource and time. Under demand management, we're looking at innovation management and demand management. APM, there's different levels within APM, our application portfolio, but also our business and our capability analysis, and then our technology portfolio. And then at a very mature state, do we understand what information each of these applications is holding? In our financial management side, we're looking at what investments are we making and how are we doing that, and then how do we track back. And then in our SDLC, there are different applications and pieces of that application. So what might this look like? So for project portfolio management, if we're using a standard 5-level maturity model, level 1, where things are kind of ad hoc. But as we start to move through the levels, not only do we mature what we're trying to do, we have more mature, more defined project management functions. We are now starting to take on planning our portfolios. In level 2 and level 3, we're taking on portfolios. We're having a feedback loop. We're looking at risks at a greater level. We're starting to analyze our risk management and understanding that not only at a per project level, but how do risks go across the entire portfolio. We're also starting to look at benefits. When we get into level 3, we're starting to look at benefits. Are we achieving benefits? Are we planning benefits? And then are we achieving benefits? Are we capturing that level of benefit that we are expecting to capture? And then level 4 and level 5, we start to bring in ROI conversation. We start to bring in, did we get what we expected to get? Were these good decisions that we made? And then feedback loops so that we can make better decisions in the future. When we get to demand management, what we're looking at here is, how did we capture demand? How did we analyze it? How did we make decisions on it? In levels 1 and 2, we're starting to have a simple methodology for analyzing our demand. We're starting to look at individual demands. We're kind of looking at, well, does this align with what we're trying to do? But there's nothing defined. There's nothing documented. There's no discipline there. As we start to get into levels 3 and 4, we're starting to add more discipline to that. We're starting to add more structure to that. We're starting to look at it from a portfolio level. Well, what this also then means is that in order to do effective demand management, we need to have done effective portfolio management in the project portfolio space, because we need to have portfolios defined. We need to understand what benefits we expect to get out of the portfolios or out of programs within the portfolios. We need to start to understand this at a bigger picture so that we make decisions at a larger picture. And then we start to, at level 5, look back and say, hey, wait, did we get the benefits that we expected? So there's that same feedback loop come back into demand management. So we start to understand how this comes together. Resource management. Well, in order to do effective demand management, we need to be able to understand what resources we have so that we don't overcommit, so that we don't have too many, so that we don't take on things that we're not able to take on, or that we don't have the resources to do. So resource management starts to tie in at that level. Again, level 1, kind of ad hoc, not really planned. We're kind of doing it as the best, best guess estimate. As we start to get into levels 2 and level 3, we start to show different pieces. We start to bring on higher levels of structure. We start to resource maybe at group levels in level 2, but starting to identify skills and understand how skills are based, so we can make decisions on not only are we there with a skill, but are we there, do we have enough people in the group, but do they have the right skills? So we can start to do planning, and we can start to understand where we need to go from a resourcing. We start to look at the governance team reviewing resource requirements before authorizing work. So this comes back into our demand management process. And we start to pay attention to the resource management as we get going forward. And then lastly, and then we get to our SDLC. Well, in our SDLC, what are we trying to do? Well, we're trying to make sure that what we provide, the things that we promise we can do. We're trying to align our activities to priorities, and we're trying to make sure that we have on-time, deliverable, dependable delivery of those. So in level 1, we start to put our groups together. We start to understand the concepts of sprints. We start to understand the concepts of stories and backlogs. And we have a very simple way of estimating, very simple way of testing. As we get towards levels 2 and 3, we start to become a little bit more sophisticated. We're starting to plan whole releases versus individual sprints. We're starting to look at backlogs by products, not just by groups. We're starting to come out with more consistent estimating ability, and we're starting to define testing as we go along, so it's more tied towards what we're trying to achieve. But where we're trying to go with this longer term is we're trying to get, when we get to level 3 and 4, we're looking at more consistently delivered results. We're looking at potentially a continuous release process with DevOps. We're looking at potentially scaled agile framework for doing things in a more sophisticated manner and tying them together. We're getting into automated testing potentially and understanding business value of each of the stories that we're running through. In application portfolio management, there are also these structures, right? So in the beginning, we kind of understand what our applications are. We don't have a good way of tracking it. We probably have spreadsheets, but now we start to build towards a more formal application portfolio. So we're trying to, one, establish a process for maintaining this, have clear roles and responsibilities, but we're also trying to have a repository that we can trust. We're looking to have improved data consistency. We're trying to tie back to business strategies and to business capabilities that are required, so we understand what we have, so we can start to make governance decisions around structure, enterprise architecture, around bringing on new applications. And so as we get to levels 4 and 5, we're looking at quality metrics. We're looking at being able to use this information for compliance issues, and we're looking for involving our stakeholders into our decisioning process. So again, we go back to that transparency conversation that we mentioned. And then we have financial management maturity. So financial management maturity, a lot of organizations start with just very high level, and then we start looking at, well, what does this business unit or this tower cost us? We're not really allocating infrastructure to services on a clear fashion. It's more of a high level allocation, and we're not really doing a strong tie to usage. But as we get moving towards levels 4 and 5, what we're looking to do is to start to really tie back usage-based chargeback. What does this enable us to do? Well, this enables us to have that trade-off and that cost-value conversation with the business, so that if they're asking for something They understand that that's what the cost of it is, and that maybe they can't have something else. And if they get option A, they don't get option B. And in my experience, things that I've seen is oftentimes people really like an idea until they realize what it actually costs, and then that changes their view of things. So this helps us with our transparency. And what we're really starting to do then in level 5 is, one, ingrain this in our IT decision-making process. What are the trade-offs? What is the conversation? What is the ROI? How do we start to play that together? But then also are validating that what our assumptions are, what the pieces that we're looking at, did they hold true? Can we learn from that? The feedback loops. So if you notice, there's some consistency across these where we have feedback loops and learning and more formal structure across all of these levels. So how do we get to a level of maturity that we feel is appropriate for our organization? Well, in my world, there's 3 competing values when we look at maturity in a roadmap. There's the logical order of implementation. I should do A, then B, then C, then D, right? These are the ways that we should put this together, because one builds on the other in a very logical order. I've never seen an organization, I've never seen an engagement, an implementation go strictly by logical order. Why? Well, we have pain points. We have users that want things. We have things that are breaking. We have initiatives that came out of nowhere. We have things that we need to address right away. So we take logical order and how do we address our pain points, and they compete for the same, compete in our model. Also, what we have is current level of maturity. Do we have something that's mature and ready to go that we can implement or get value out of without very much investment? So you take these 3 competing values, and we put them together to create a roadmap. So if this is what full maturity across those 6 areas would look like, there are different ways that we can get there. Some groups that I've worked with, both in a past life and in consulting, would turn around and say, hey, I'm just going to get each of my disciplines at its full mature state one at a time. I'm just going to focus on application portfolio management. Then I'm going to get my project management office in order. Then I'm going to get my demand management in order and across the board. But what happens there? Well, some of the logical order and the dependency that we talked about doesn't happen there, because maybe I need some pieces from, as we talked about, from resource management in order to bring my demand management up to an appropriate level. To get to level 3, I may need some resource management. In order to get financial management in place at a certain level, I probably need information out of application portfolio management and out of project management in order to understand that. And on all of these, I need information out of ITSM. I need a CMDB, I need some transactional, I need operational resource plans. So some of those dependencies are there. Another approach that some organizations take is that they say, all right, then I'm going to get everything to a level 1, and then I'm going to build on that and come across. Well, that's good in that maybe my dependencies are being addressed there, but it takes a long time to get to where we want to go. And I'm not really addressing the pain point issue, right? Because maybe my real pain is in my SDLC process, but I'm not getting there because I got to get everybody else up to that same level. So really not addressing the pain point aspect of that. So what we have found, and what usually winds up happening, is that it's kind of a combination, right? So an organization may go, hey, I got to get some rudimentary project management in place so I can start to understand what I'm doing, and I can start to understand what's going on in my organization. All right, now I got to get my SDLC going a little bit. I got to get my development groups aligned. I got to get a little bit better efficiency out of those. I need to understand that. Wait, in order to feed that better, I have to get my project management up to the next level, where maybe I start to do a little bit of hybrid project management, or I do a little bit of agile project management. Now, in order to support intake into my projects and into my SDLC, I need to get my demand management in place. And in order to do that, I got to get some of my resource and time management in place so that I can understand this better. Well, From there, oh wait, I want to understand what my application structure looks like. I want to understand my enterprise architecture so I can make better decisions on some of this. Oh wait, now I need to improve my project management a little bit more to support these. And as you can see, every organization is going to have a slightly different path that they get to in order to make maturity. Also, they may not decide that they need to be a level 5 in everything that we're here. A level 2 in financial might be sufficient for the organization. It might not be a very large organization, and they maybe can handle this. There is a cost to going fully mature on everything that's there, or going to a level 5 maturity. And that cost benefit, there's a diminishing return for some organizations as they go. So we really need to look at what is the right size for each of the discipline areas. What is the proper course to get to where we want to go? So just wrapping up a little bit of this, we've said a lot of stuff today, and we've said it very quickly. This was an introduction into this. There'll be a series of these coming out of this where we dive deeper into each of those subjects, or you can reach out to us. And if you can't tell, I love talking about this stuff. I'll talk about this stuff with you all day. You can reach out. We can dive deeper into it ourselves. But just in general, in conclusion, what we talked about is we really want to make sure that we focus on business value. We want to make sure that the decisions that we make, both on what initiatives we take on, what services and service levels that we address, what we do as we walk through here, is providing the right level of value back to the business. Because if it isn't, we're wasting money. We also want to understand what is mature enough. We don't need to be best in class in everything across the board because of that diminishing return on investment as we start to go up the maturity level, or up the value level. We also want to understand that balance, right? The logical order versus pain points versus current maturity path, because we want to get best value soonest into our organization. So we want to make sure that we're addressing the things that give us the best value with the least amount of rework, and that we can get value quickly back from. We also want to infuse industry best practices. This is some of the stuff that we work on all the time, right? There's industry best practices are there for a reason. People much smarter than I am at least, have learned from these practices, have done the work and done the effort, and we can learn and accelerate what we're trying to do with that. And then lastly, any project manager in the room will tell you this: take small steps and then reevaluate after each milestone, right? So we've established a path. We've established what we think is the correct path. Well, after we've taken those first couple of steps, let's look and make sure that that path still makes sense, that we haven't learned something new from there, and that we need to move on from there. Josh, does this make sense?
100%. I think the biggest takeaway here is there isn't one ideal path for every organization. Right. You need to evaluate where you're at. You need to evaluate the things that are important to your business. And again, to kind of go back to Greg's point, evaluate the pain points as well. Because if you're doing things to mature, but not addressing the things that are making it difficult in your organization, you're not addressing the root causes, right? You're just kind of spinning your wheels to get to a certain maturity level.
Correct.
And that really goes into this top portion of how CDW can help in the in the IT business management and the journey, we call it. The top one is maturity assessment and roadmap. It's getting in, defining what your future state of maturity is from an agreed perspective of all stakeholders involved. It's taking your current state and that future state and reconciling to what it will take to actually get there. And then delineating that journey into kind of, what do we say, a roadmap, right? How are we going to achieve the appropriate maturity by each phase? And then OCM is huge, right? We need to have an organizational change management plan, because doing these things involves, well, change. And everybody knows change is hard. I don't think I'm the first one that has said that, and you all have heard. But to me, when you define a roadmap, now you've got a starting point of your journey. That doesn't mean that is the end all be all and it's set in stone, because as Greg stated, as you move through paths, you need to be double checking and looking back to understand if the direction that you're heading is truly the direction we need to continue to head today, as it was, 6, 12, 18 months ago. So that's really where I would say the starting point needs to be when you're looking at this as an overall maturity of your organization in the business management and IT business management space. So for the ones that need to get started and need to get, we'll say, operationalizing things quickly as a starting point, right? The jump start that we offer for project portfolio management really is the identify, okay, what are the pain points, and let's start to operationalize the efficiencies to help those pain points within the platform. And again, taking it step by step and not trying to consume the entire suite. We're going to take individual chunked steps to be able to build on the things that we're doing in the last phase, if that makes sense. And then advisory services and process engineering. That's really about taking not the platform and what we're doing, but take what we would enable on the platform and talk through how can we make them more efficient? How can we build out processes that you may not have established today? Always looking internally first to understand, if you say, I don't have a process, but you do things, a process without a process is still a process. You're doing activities. So by definition, we want to help you engineer and solidify those a bit more so that you have better optimization and you can start working towards a larger maturity level. And to kind of capitalize on the last statement that Greg stated of, you don't have to get to maturity level 5 on everything. That goes through all these services that we offer as well. We meet you where you're at and get you to where you need to be, not necessarily where everybody in the industry is, but where you need to be as an organization. And if you sit at a maturity level 2 and you're driving absolute value for your organization, that may be where you stay. There may be no business value driver to get you to that next one because we're optimized, we're good. So with that, we're going to open up to Q&A. I have not seen any questions come in. So if there's any questions that the users have that are on the line, please throw them in the Q&A portion and we can answer them at this point.
Yeah, and Josh, actually, I do see 2 questions that just came in. One of them says, we started with demand management. Was that a mistake?
So I don't.
Go ahead,
I don't think it's a. Yeah, I'm sorry, Josh.
No.
It might not be a mistake, right? So understanding what your demand is, understanding what is being asked of your organization might work for you. It depends on where your pain points are. Logical versus pain points versus maturity. So demand is a good way of getting a handle on what's coming in. But if your pain point was actually giving, it was actually managing your work, then maybe you wanted to start with SDLC or start with project management. It really depends on what your organization environment was like.
And I'll also add to that too. One of the things that we've done this with a lot of clients, me personally as well, where you already have an established mechanism for operationalizing other processes within we'll call it PPM, right? Because demand project portfolio. If you are utilizing a utility like Project Online, and that's going just fine, right? But you have absolutely no centralized location for your demand management, right? As you started with demand management. That is something that you need to get out of the spreadsheets first, right? Kind of business as usual on project, have it in the plan, but with demand management, let's get that so everybody's using the same utility, not sharing things back and forth, and as soon as you receive it, it's out of date, right? Because you have nothing to leverage your processes with the other things that we can utilize within the platform. So I would say it's not. If that was the right move, and maybe it wasn't, but you started there, that's okay too, right?
Yep.
But I wouldn't say that there's a blanket statement for that.
Cool. Now another question here. Basically, yeah, I can shorten this question a little bit, or I can kind of run with it as it is. But the question is about resource management. Can you successfully do resource management if you're not also doing time management in ServiceNow?
Yes, see, a lot of organizations, a lot of people kind of get resource and time as the same thing. Resource management to me is a planning mechanism. I think it's going to take this much. I think I'm going to need, half a DBA for the month of August on this initiative. And so now I know that if I only have 5 DBAs and I already have all 5 of them allocated, I can't take on that initiative. That's resource management, understanding and planning and moving forward. Time management is what did I actually spend, right? So I planned to use half a DBA, but I actually spent 2/3 of a DBA. I went over or I went under. So they work together, but one is a planning, one is a reporting and actual. Time management gives you the ability to go back and check on your estimating techniques and stuff. That why did I think it was only going to be half when it's going to be more, or something to that effect. They do work together, but you can start with resource management and enhance that process without time management.
Good. And another question just came in. Who are the stakeholders that you are expecting to meet with during this exercise, business or IT?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is a yes. It depends on which of the workshops we're doing and what we're doing here, right? So we like to walk both business and IT and walk from the top down when we have these conversations, because we have to understand what the business expectations are and where that goes, and then we need to show how can we align and come back to that. Too often IT, and I'm not saying it happens in any of your organizations, but I've seen it in other places. Too often IT kind of acts in a silo and says, we know what's best for the organization. You're not actually a seat at the table at this point. This is a conversation that has to happen across both of these parts of the organization.
Yeah, I know that makes sense. And just speaking from our organization, right, we use ServiceNow, as I mentioned earlier, and we use ITBM extensively. And I've seen, demand come in, and as that demand gets confirmed, I've seen everything that happens from a resource management, from an availability, right, as we look and see at what's the start time on that project, where are the resources coming from. We've had many tough decisions, right, because we use it also to manage our internal ServiceNow instance. And now that you say that, Greg, I've been in those meetings where we've had our leaders from IT and the business stakeholders from CDW.
Mm-hmm.
Business stakeholders are talking about what we need in terms of outcomes and the timing on that. And IT is there really to talk about what can we support, right? And if we're going to have to give you X and Y, we may have to hold off on Z. So I do agree with you guys. Having both at the table is really productive.
Right.
Good. I think that's everything that we have on the questions here, teed up. So just a reminder, right, to everybody, first of all, thanks for coming. And we want your feedback, not only on this session, but what topics are we going to look for in January, February, March, and into next year? We'd really love to get feedback on that. And if you'd like more information, if you'd like some time with Greg or Josh or any of our team, if you're a CDW customer, you have access to some of the top ServiceNow and process professionals, quite frankly, in the world. And we are happy to take our time with you, lunch and learns, those kinds of things. Just reply to your invite. Let us know that you'd like a chat or are interested in getting more information, whatever you need. I'm happy to help you out. So thanks so much for joining, and we look forward to a great year next year and some good topics to continue things on here.
Yep. All right. Thanks, guys. This was fun.
Excellent. Thanks everybody.
Josh. Thanks, Greg. Really appreciate it. And thanks, everybody. Look forward to talking to you soon. Bye-bye.